This conversation we're having about finance and how to de-risk it, how to make it affordable, how to make it accessible, that conversation is not complete until you bring in the private sector. Because the private sector has great potential of a multiplier effect. But you know, the private sector cannot go ahead. Sometimes, especially in spaces that are risky, the private sector is driven by return. And therefore, they want to know what is the return, because the private sector shareholders demand from management, results. So for us to multiply what we are doing in the public sector, the private sector is very significant and very important. And that is why when we are discussing about de-risking, there is no way you can get private sector money into Africa if we haven't sorted out the issue of risk. Nobody's going to invest here. We just have to be honest to ourselves. The moment we sort out that, and they can see what the public sector is doing, the private sector can multiply that 2-3 times. It is, they can bring that on board. We had a conversation as a country about the cost of fintech money. And it was quite something. It was quite a conversation. In fact, it was one of the big conversations in the last election. Fuliza, you remember, you guys remember. And it was because I think the fintech companies were charging 1%, I think, per day or thereabout. So it was 300% per year or something like that. So, and the big conversation was, this is predatory. That was the language then. But let me tell you the positive side of this. So when we decided, as government, when I came into office, I promised that we would look at another financial product that would be cost-effective. So we came into office, I called the fintechs together. They are business people, but they are also patriotic. I was really amazed at the patriotism of the fintech companies. They were making money with what they were doing, but they were willing to work with us on a product that would make them make less money, but more beneficial to the public. That was amazing. I mean, really. That's how positive they were. So we developed a product, the Hustler Fund. Instead of charging 1% per day, we are charging 0.002% per day, which is 8% per year. And all the fintechs that were in that space, many of the banks that were in that space, participated in bringing into being a product that was more amenable, accessible. It was much more cheaper to the public. They participated in it because they saw the value of greater access. Today, we have close to 15 million Kenyans on the Hustler Fund. We've lent 35 billion in the last 8 months, Kenyan shillings. And we have 7 million people almost daily in that space. So, and the same private sector that was participating in the predatory one, if I may call it, are participating in this one. And they are supporting it. So that tells you how the public sector can influence the private sector to do the right thing, to bring down the costs from what it was to what it is. And that is how I could explain that if, as the public sector, we were to de-risk the space around financing, we would leverage more resources from the private sector once they see what we are doing in the public sector. Even speaking to this aspect of risk and aspect of debt as a percentage of GDP. What is the balance sheet we are using for countries? Have we really captured the assets of every country? On one hand, we capture the assets that have been developed using fossil fuel resources. On the other hand, we give no account of renewable energy resources that we accept that they are huge resources, but they are nowhere in any country's balance sheet. We have huge assets of carbon sequestration. When are we going to make our renewable assets part of our assessment of our wealth and make it a percentage, the money we have borrowed, a percentage of GDP? When are we going to make our renewable assets part of our balance sheet? When are we going to make our carbon sequestration assets, natural assets, our mangroves, our forests, when are we going to make it part of our assets so that when you calculate the money we have borrowed as a percentage of GDP, you don't tell us we are at 65 when we are actually at 15. It means we can open up a lot of fiscal space if we were assessed appropriately with all our assets. It's another conversation we must have. I have talked to the Africa Development Bank on this subject, and they are the ones actually who are telling me, look, I think there is a conversation we should have. And we should do this without all these geopolitical pushes here and there. We do not think, and I insist, that we shouldn't be having this quarrel between the West, the South, China on the other end. We're all part of the same equation. And it's not also going to be fair for anybody to be asked to choose friends. That you cannot talk to the West and talk to China at the same time. That would be very unfair if anybody were to require of us that, or to try and choose friends for anybody. I think we just need to be fair. Let us look at a global problem. Let us have a global solution, including everybody. China must be in the equation. Our brothers and sisters from the global south, those of us from the continent must be in the equation. Of course, our brothers from the global north must be in the equation. Let us have a conversation about how to solve this problem together.